Welcome to this episode of the Essential Church Podcast, an ongoing conversation about some of the most important issues facing the local church today. I'm your host, Andrew Arndt, and today I want to take you to the second part of a two-part interview that I did with Pastor Brady recently on the question of how do we attract and keep strong and capable leaders. In the first conversation, we talked about the kinds of environments that we want to create that allows leaders to thrive and flourish, and that will also be attractive to new leaders from the outside. In this conversation, I want to take you to some of the things that we're looking for in the leaders that we're hiring, and this really gets you down into some of the nitty-gritty of leadership. I think it gets down to where the rubber meets the road of leadership, actually, which separates good leaders from great leaders. This conversation was jam-packed with just amazing insights, as always, with Pastor Brady. So without further commentary from me, here's to the conversation. Let's shift gears here and think about and talk about what we're looking for when we look for really good leaders. What do we mean by that?
Yeah, well, I know this, that regardless if you're pastoring a rural church of 50 people in western Nebraska, or you're pastoring a larger church in a growing suburban area of North America somewhere, or if you're leading a church in Central or South America, we all need really the same leaders. We need the same kind of leaders with the same skill sets. And so if your church is growing, or if your church is in decline, or if your church is plateaued, I promise you, these are the leaders that you need. And these are three things that I'm looking for. My eyes are open for these kinds of leaders. And when I see them, I make room for them. I trust the Lord that we'll just have room for them on our team. So the first thing is, I'm looking for leaders who will help me expand the vision. I think one of the great misunderstandings of the 21st century American church is that the senior pastor is the only one who has vision for the church. And I disagree with that wholeheartedly. In fact, I think that's an unhealthy church culture when the only person with a vision for the church is the senior pastor. Now, the senior pastor should be the primary vision carrier, and the senior pastor of the church should be responsible for the final vision of the church. In other words, it shouldn't be just everyone's voice is, equal and everybody can do whatever they want. The senior pastor needs to have some say over that, and it creates order out of the chaos. But I am looking for people with ideas. And I'm not looking for people who just bring me the problems. I'm looking for people who bring me solutions. I get so frustrated sometimes when leaders say, "Well, Pastor Brady, this is broken and this is not going well." I said, "Well, what's your plan to fix it? How can I help you fix it? Now that you've pointed out the problem, it seems that the Lord's given you a burden for it. So let me help you with you now. Go back to the Lord and ask for a solution." And when you find those kind of leaders who are proactive, who leaders who can see the global view of the church. So when leaders are fixated on one particular area or one particular department, and that's the only thing they can see, that's not the leader that I'm looking for. I'm looking for a leader who cares deeply about their particular project or their assignment, but also understands the full weight of the church. They can see everything, and they have a view. They can rise out of their micro world and see the macro church that they belong to, and carry some of the weight. And they're looking for innovative approaches to everything. I like people who are innovative and who are thinking differently, who come up with ideas, and sometimes these are terrible ideas. I mean, sometimes they're silly and terrible, but I don't mock them. And we should not make fun of bad ideas.
You will pay the price for that if you start making fun of ideas. You will no longer have ideas.
Well, here's what I tell people: you shoot one messenger, you won't get another one.
That's right.
So sometimes, you're going to hear a bad idea, but they're making you aware of a problem. Now, their solution was terrible, but at least they were aware of the problem. So I'm looking for people who can, who have ideas and who think and who want to broaden and champion new things in the church. And do they see the whole scope of ministry and not just the part? So I want those people who have vision.
Yeah, and that's a big thing because you can bring leaders in who are very visionary in their area. And then every time you're talking with them, you go, come on, you're not considering how this impacts other things. So it goes to your point about thinking globally.
Well, recently, this is an example that may help people understand this. So recently, in our budgeting process, we had to decrease some operational budgets for certain departments in order to pay better salaries for people because cost of living and inflation is making it impossible for people to live in our area without some raises. So we had to give raises to a lot of people on our staff in order for them to live in the community where they're pastoring.
Yeah.
Well, where does that money come from? It comes from operational budgets. And so I had some departmental leaders really get upset with me because their individual budget got decreased.
Right.
But when I said to them, listen, the reason I did that is so all of us in this room can keep our jobs and be paid well, they went, oh, well, that makes sense. That's what I'm talking about. Not just being so fixated on your bottom line, but consider how this affects everyone in the church.
And I've appreciated that about you. You always invite us to, hey, see it through my eyes. And you're very open about that. It helps. It really helps.
Yeah, to see what's the weight that the leader, everyone that's listening to this podcast has someone that's leading you. So are you considering the weight of the person leading you? And how are you making that weight easier?
Yep.
How are you helping them? How are you coming alongside them and being the Aaron and the Hur in their life where you're lifting up their arms in battle? How are you? That's what I'm talking about. Expanding the vision is by simply coming around and making things lighter on the leaders around you and not heavier.
So good. So expand the vision. What's the next thing that you're looking for in a leader?
Can you coach the team? Can you coach the people around you? And I'll give you an example of this. There's a lot of times there are people who are really good at their practices. They're good at preaching and teaching, or they're good at content, curriculum. They're good at filming. Like right now, there's a team in this room that's filming and editing this podcast, and they're very, very good at it. And I'm proud of them. But can you coach the people around you? So when you see, Eric, when you see potential for growth in another person, and you have the authority to speak to that person about that area of potential growth, can you coach them? Can you speak truth to them in a way that causes them to grow? I'm not talking about if everything you say to them is punitive and corrective, then they're not going to grow from that. But I'm talking about, do you know how to coach? Now, I grew up playing sports, and I grew up with some really good coaches. I had some coaches that just would not let me get away with sloppiness. And I just remember how much I hated it at the time. But when we won ball games, I realized the reason we won that ball game is because my coach didn't let us get away with sloppy practices.
It's good.
And so here's what I say to my leaders. If I came into your department, would I find sloppy procedures, sloppy habits? That's a reflection on the leader. That's not a reflection on the people being sloppy. Because if without good leadership, everybody gets sloppy. But I'm just saying, if I came into your area that you influence, is it organized? Or is there clear vision for what everyone's supposed to do? Does everyone on your team know what it means to win? What's a win? Why are you doing it? Those are things that I'm looking for. So can you, and when there's people on your team that are out of bounds, exhibiting poor attitudes, exhibiting poor behavior, do you know how to sit down with them, look them in the eye, call them to attention, call them to better practices? Can you coach them?
Yes.
Can you speak to them and bring out the best in them?
This goes right back to the second point from the last episode about healthy confrontation. It's really about, are we in constant and ongoing dialogue about the things that matter most to us with our work? Can I praise the right behaviors? Do I have avenues to do that? And also, can I correct the things that need to be corrected?
Well, some people that are listening to this podcast, they just have this strong sense that you got a big knot in your stomach right now. And I just had this conversation with someone the other day. They said, Pastor Brady, I've been trying to help this person on my team for over a year. And I said to them, hey, that's gracious. I said, are you clear with them about what you're expecting from them? Yes. Have you seen any noticeable improvements? No. I said, how long have you been telling them that this needs to change? They said, over a year. And I said, it hasn't changed. No. I said, that's your fault.
Yeah, who is this about at this point?
Then at some point, you have to let them go.
It's about you.
It's about, if you don't let them go, you're going to lose confidence and trust with the rest of your team because they're going to see you really didn't hold them to account.
There is truth, I think, in the statement that leadership in many ways is it's like raising our threshold for other people's pain. You know, in this case, that leader just couldn't tolerate the idea of causing this person pain. But that person underperforming is causing pain to the whole organization. So you're not actually getting away with it. Now you've just spread the pain around everywhere.
I love John Ortberg's definition of leadership. It says leadership in the church is disappointing people at a pace that they can accept.
That's right. Doesn't mean, and the coaching doesn't mean that we need to be mean. And when we need to move people on from their positions, we also don't need to be mean about it. But you have to have the courage to make the hard decision. It goes back to the Steve Jobs thing. Like if you want to be popular and friendly, go sell ice cream. If you want to lead,
you've got to
raise
coach.
your threshold for pain.
And I'm looking for coaches.
Yep.
And I'm looking for people who can call the best out of the people around them. And that's important. So do they bring ideas and innovation? Can they expand the vision? Can they coach the team? And then lastly, do they know what it means to carry the weight of the organization?
Yeah, talk to us about that.
Okay, carrying the weight means, can they deal with issues that, part of it is coaching again, but when I talk, what do they have to bring every issue to me?
Right.
Can they take responsibility and deal with problems in their particular area, their sphere of influence, without involving me all the time?
I love that. Like, based on what you know of what I've said and what we're about, can you solve this within 99% of certainty? And in that last 1% where you just can't figure it out, that's where you come and talk to me.
But
I need you to be able to think that way.
But this is important for all the senior pastors and maybe nonprofit CEOs, people that are listening with you have organizational leadership. Have you empowered your people to do it? And this is what I've tried to do at New Life, is empower my staff. You deal with the issue. These are our values. These are the conditions in which we deal with conflict. I've tried to teach that and model that. Now I'm expecting you, without my input, to deal with the conflict in your area, and if necessary, give me a report on how that meeting went. But I don't need to be involved in every decision and dispute, because at some point that weighs down the senior pastor. I mean, it is a burden that you cannot carry when you have to be involved in every single issue and conflict that's going on. And I'm talking about, listen, some of the most exhausted pastors I know right now are pastors of 100-member churches.
Right.
This is not a mega church problem. This is a small church problem.
Yep.
And small church pastors, rural pastors right now, they feel like they have to be involved in every single issue. And the key to longevity, the key to your organization growing, is making sure your team feels equipped and empowered to deal with issues without with very nominal input from you.
I want to ask you a question real quick on that. You lead a large organization here. And you've done such a good job at delegating and empowering. We all feel that. Talk to us about what you do to make sure that you're not losing touch with what's happening in your organization as you're delegating in that way.
Well, it's important that I'm present with the people that I've given that responsibility to, and there are no shortcuts to that. Recently, I went on a trip, to Central America. I took people with me, and I didn't need that many people to go with me. Logistically, I don't need 3 or 4 people to go with me on a missions trip, because I didn't have that. We didn't have that much to do that required that many people.
Right.
I went on the trip because I need time. So I try to make use of my time to make sure I'm present with people, and I don't always do a good job with that. I'll admit that, but when I can, I try to be present with the people that I've empowered to do the work with me. Be present with them. Be available to them. It's easy to get in contact with me. It's easy. I return text. I return emails. I'm quick to say yes to a lunch. I have purposeful physical meetings with my key leadership team all the time. I try to, there's 2 types of meetings. There's scheduled meetings and unscheduled meetings. And I try to have both. I try to have that spontaneous interactions with people. You and I had a little car ride over a minute ago, 5 minutes together. Those things are valuable to me, though. Getting contact with you, looking you in the eye, asking you how your family's doing, checking in on you. There's no substitute for physical presence. None.
Yeah, it's good. Talk to us. Anything more about carrying the weight? What else are you looking for in the carrying the weight?
Yeah, do they understand what excellence is? Do they know where the win is? Can they identify and magnify the win to the team? That's what I love. This when someone on our team is clear about why we're doing it and what a win looks like. And when they can identify that, and when they can express that to their team thrives. And those are the teams that are running out ahead of everyone else. Those are the teams that are flourishing and multiplying. And listen, I want to say this: every pastor, every nonprofit leader If God is the author and the finisher of your ministry, it is God's will for you to have healthy leaders in your organization.
Yeah.
And if you'll do the hard work in advance to prepare the soil of your organization, God has leaders. There are young men and women all over this world who are looking for places to serve. And the eyes of the Lord are roaming throughout the earth looking for churches and organizations where he can place them, and he will know that they will flourish and be taken care of and their souls will be cared for. And I promise you, if you'll create that environment, you will never lack for leaders.